welcome to today's deep dive. Usually when you walk into a building, let's say like a towering skyscraper, or maybe just your local grocery store, there's this really profound, undeniable sense of permanence.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, the walls are exactly where they are. The ceiling is, fixed at a certain height. You don't just walk into a room and question the structural integrity of the concrete.
Right. You just navigate the physical space that someone else already built.
Exactly. You navigate what's already there.
But it's an illusion of absolute permanence, really, because the environment dictates your behavior. You look for the exit signs, you follow the flow of the hallways, and you just accept the perimeter as an unchangeable boundary.
Yeah, you don't even think about it.
Mhm.
But then, you encounter a piece of writing that just hands you a sledgehammer.
I love that analogy.
Right, like a text that suggests the concrete isn't actually concrete at all. That the walls you're walking between, the ceilings you keep bumping your head against, are entirely of your own making. And today's source material, which is an excerpt from a text called The Architect of Reality, takes a sledgehammer right to that concrete. It achieves this complete paradigm shift in literally just a title and two tiny sentences.
It really does. It's incredibly dense.
It is. And our mission for this deep dive is to dissect the mechanics of this minimalist philosophy, I guess you could call it. We want to discover how it can fundamentally alter your approach to your daily life, your projects, and just the friction you face every day.
Yeah, and when a text is this brief, every single syllable is load-bearing. We're looking at a highly concentrated drop of insight here. And in a world of information overload, sometimes pausing to examine just one drop is way more valuable than drowning in an ocean of data.
Totally. Okay, let's unpack this because it would start right at the top with the title of the source text itself, The Architect of Reality.
Right.
And to help you, the listener, visualize this, I think about the difference between being a tourist versus being an architect.
Oh, that's a good way to frame it.
Right, because a tourist just wanders through a building marveling at or, complaining about what's already there.
Yeah, the lighting in here is terrible or whatever.
Exactly. But an architect actually drafts the blueprints.
Yeah.
They decide where the walls go in the first place.
What's fascinating here is the specific choice of the noun architect. It immediately establishes this tension between agency and passivity.
How so?
Well, because most of us operate more like, I don't know, interior decorators of our reality rather than architects.
Interior decorators, yeah.
We take the room we're handed and we might rearrange the furniture. We might paint the walls a different color to make it more tolerable.
Put some nice curtains.
Right. But we rarely question the placement of the load-bearing walls themselves. An architect, however, starts with a blank plot of land. They calculate shear strength, they anticipate structural tension, and they draft the blueprint from scratch.
And that implies a lot of intention.
Exactly. Because an architect doesn't just wish a building into existence. They don't close their eyes and hope a skyscraper pops up.
Right. It's not the magician of reality.
Yes. Architecture is the disciplined application of intention against the laws of physics. It requires taking raw, abstract concepts and applying a rigorous framework to them until they become physical reality.
I mean, that sounds amazing, but I want to push back on that immediately, actually.
Go for it.
Because it's a beautiful metaphor. But let's look at the physical constraints of the real world. How does this philosophy hold up against systemic barriers?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah, because it's very easy to say, hey, you are the architect of your reality if you're handed, unlimited funding and prime real estate.
Yeah.
But what if you're building with scraps?
Right.
What if the terrain you're forced to build on is fundamentally unstable due to economic or social realities? I mean, what does the text say about that?
Well, that is the ultimate test of this philosophy, and the answer lies in understanding what an architect actually does.
Yep.
An architect doesn't ignore gravity, right? An architect uses an understanding of gravity to figure out how to make a 100-story building actually stand up.
Right, they work with the physics of the environment.
Exactly. The systemic barriers you mentioned, the lack of resources, the hostile environment, those are the terrain. Those are the specific laws of physics in your specific environment.
Yeah, sure.
A bad architect complains about the gravity, but a master architect designs a structure specifically engineered to withstand that specific gravity.
So the constraints don't negate the agency. The constraints simply dictate the engineering requirements.
Precisely. If you are building with scraps, your agency lies in becoming an absolute master of assembling scraps.
Wow. Yeah.
The title implies that reality is not something that just happens to you. It's a structure you have the active agency to design, even if the terrain is brutal.
Which logically means if we're meant to be the architect, we really need to know what our primary building materials are.
Right. You need to know what you're building with.
And the text gives us that answer right away in its first sentence.
Yeah.
Quote, "Your mindset creates your reality." Now, for you listening, you might already be highly familiar with cognitive framing and psychology, so we really need to bypass the generic self-help interpretation of this.
We do, because on the surface, mindset creates reality sounds dangerously close to like toxic positivity.
Yeah, the whole just think good thoughts and millions of dollars will manifest crap.
Exactly. And that's not what this is. We have to look at the actual neurological mechanics of what the text is claiming. The source deliberately uses the word mindset, not wishes or daydreams.
Well, let's talk about those mechanics, because honestly, when I first read creates, I wanted to substitute the word influences. Like mindset influences reality. That feels safer.
Right. It feels more scientifically sound.
Yeah, but the text is absolute. It says creates. So how does a biological process in the brain literally construct a physical reality without dipping into mysticism? What does it really mean when it says mindset creates?
Okay, to understand the physical creation of reality, we have to look at the reticular activating system.
The RAS.
Right, the RAS in the human brain. A mindset is essentially an operating system. If we connect this to the bigger picture, at any given second, your nervous system is bombarded by millions of bits of data.
Just a constant stream.
Yes. Sights, sounds, microexpressions on people's faces, opportunities, threats, ambient noise. If your conscious brain tried to process all of it, you would instantly collapse from sensory overload.
So the brain requires like a bouncer at the door of your consciousness.
The RAS is that bouncer. It's a bundle of nerves at our brainstem that filters out the unnecessary noise and only lets in the data that is deemed strictly necessary.
Okay, I'm with you.
But here is the critical mechanism. The RAS needs a sorting algorithm to know what to let in and what to block. And your mindset is that sorting algorithm.
Oh, here's where it gets really interesting. So it's like a camera lens
Yeah.
or tinted glasses.
Yes, perfect analogy.
Because the physical environment might be completely identical for two people. But if one wears a lens of opportunity and the other a lens of defeat, they are literally inhabiting and reacting to two completely different realities.
Exactly. And the implications of that are staggering when you apply it to high-stakes environments. If your mindset, your architectural blueprint is coded for threat and scarcity, your RAS will literally delete data points that represent opportunity.
Wait, really? It just deletes them?
You won't even consciously perceive them.
Wow.
Think about it. Two people can sit in the exact same boardroom listening to the exact same corporate merger announcement. The physical environment is identical.
Right.
But person A has a mindset coded for growth. Their RAS allows in the data points about like new market caps, the sudden availability of leadership roles, the gaps in the new organizational chart.
They see the open doors.
Right. Person B, however, has a mindset coded for self-protection. Their RAS filters out all of that and only highlights the redundant departments, the vague language from the CEO, the subtle signs of impending layoffs.
So they are biologically inhabiting two completely different realities right then and there.
Absolutely.
And then person A leaves the room and immediately drafts a proposal for a new department head position. But person B leaves the room, goes back to their desk, and spends the next 4 hours updating their resume out of pure panic.
And look at the cascading physical effects of those actions. Person A's proposal gets them promoted. Person B's panic causes their daily performance to drop, eventually making them a prime candidate for the very layoffs they were terrified of.
Man.
The mindset didn't magically alter the atomic structure of the universe. It programmed the biological filter, which dictated their focus, which drove their physical behavior, which ultimately constructed the tangible environment they woke up in 6 months later.
Mindset literally creates reality.
It creates it, yes.
That is a terrifying level of accountability, honestly.
It really is.
Because if your RAS is filtering millions of data points right now based on the instructions you've given it, the inescapable question is, what kind of reality are you accidentally building?
Right, because most of us inherit our blueprints.
Yet we inherit our mindsets from our parents, our early failures, our localized culture. We're out here building massive life structures using blueprints we didn't even consciously draft.
Which brings us to the friction of the text's final command. Once you accept that your mindset is the tool creating your reality, the immediate next question is, well, how are you using that tool?
Right.
You need an engineering directive. You need to know how to calibrate it. And the text anticipates this by providing a strict two-word directive: think bigger.
Think bigger. It's brilliantly concise, but structurally, it is incredibly demanding.
It's not just motivational fluff. It's a structural requirement within the logic of the text.
Because notice the grammatical construction there.
Yeah.
The text doesn't say think a little bigger. It doesn't say think outside the box. And crucially, it doesn't say think biggest.
Biggest would imply a terminal velocity, right?
Right.
It would imply there's a final ultimate limit you can reach where the architecture is complete and you can just finally rest.
Yeah. Exactly. Bigger is open-ended. It's a comparative adjective. It's a vector. It implies a continuous, never-ending process of scaling up.
And this raises an important question for the listener. Where have you arbitrarily placed a ceiling on your own blueprints?
Because if mindset equals reality, then a constrained small mindset inherently results in a constrained small reality.
Exactly.
But here's where I see a massive collision between philosophy and biology.
Oh, the amygdala response.
Yes, if mindset equals reality, and the directive is to continuously think bigger, you are essentially commanding your nervous system to constantly walk into the unknown. And the human amygdala hates the unknown.
It despises it.
Our biology is wired for homeostasis. It wants us to stay small, stay hidden, and conserve energy so we don't die.
And that friction, the friction between the biological drive for safety and the psychological drive for expansion, that's the core struggle of the architect. Thinking bigger naturally triggers the brain's threat response. When you attempt to scale your blueprint, say, moving from managing a small team to pitching a global initiative, your biology sounds the alarm.
Right. It perceives the increased exposure and risk as a literal physical threat to your survival.
Yeah.
So how do you bypass the amygdala? Like if you, the listener, are staring at a massive bottleneck in your career right now, or a creative project that is completely stalled out, how do you operationalize this command to think bigger when your nervous system is screaming at you to play it safe?
Well, you use the comparative nature of the word itself. You don't jump from a garden shed to a 100-story skyscraper in a single cognitive leap.
Okay, because the biological resistance would be too high.
Right, you'd panic. Instead, you look at the adjacent possible. When we're stuck on a problem, it's almost always because we're thinking too small. We're agonizing over the placement of a single window. We are arguing over localized friction.
We're trying to interior decorate a fundamentally flawed room.
Yes. So applying the directive means forcing your mindset to elevate one level of abstraction above the current problem.
Give me an example of that.
Okay, if you're constantly arguing with a vendor over shipping delays, thinking bigger doesn't mean arguing better.
Right.
Thinking bigger means asking, why am I relying on external shipping at all? What does the blueprint look like where we acquire the supply chain ourselves?
Oh, wow. So you bypass the petty obstacles entirely by making them irrelevant to the new structure.
Exactly.
It reminds me of how heavily entrenched companies operate. Like a company with a small mindset tries to beat the competition by undercutting their price by like 5%. They fight this localized bloody war over pennies.
Right.
But a company that executes the Think Bigger directive looks at the market and says, how do we render the competition completely obsolete by creating an entirely new category?
And that requires overriding the instinct to protect what you already have, because the reality of thinking bigger is that it requires a certain amount of structural destruction.
Destructive growth.
You cannot build the new, larger reality without tearing up the foundation of the old one.
That is the part that always gets left out of the motivational speeches.
Yeah.
Growth is inherently destructive. If you expand your mindset, if you recalibrate your RAS to hunt for massive opportunities rather than localized safety, you are going to outgrow your current environment.
You will outgrow your current job. You will outgrow certain relationships.
Yeah.
You will outgrow the coping mechanisms that kept you safe in the smaller reality. And that is where the true test of the architect lies. When the walls of your current reality start cracking under the pressure of your expanding mindset, do you panic and patch the cracks?
Or do you grab the sledgehammer and help knock them down?
Exactly.
I want to pause on that image for a second because that is the exact inflection point for you, the listener. If you take this text seriously, if you truly adopt the mantle of the architect, you are going to feel those cracks. You're going to apply the Think Bigger directive to a problem you are facing today. And suddenly, the limitations of your current environment are going to become agonizingly obvious.
And the friction you feel in your life right now might not be a sign that you're doing something wrong. It might just be the sheer mechanical stress of a mindset that has grown too large for the reality it's currently housed within.
Which fundamentally changes how you view adversity.
Totally.
Because if you're the passive tourist we talked about earlier, adversity is just bad luck. It's the museum being closed or the lighting being terrible. But if you're the architect, adversity is just data.
It's structural feedback.
Exactly. It's structural feedback telling you where the blueprint needs to be reinforced or expanded.
Think about the immense power in that reframe. The next time you face a catastrophic failure, a project collapse, or a sudden loss of resources, you don't interpret it as the universe punishing you.
Right. Your RAS doesn't filter it as a final defeat.
No. Your architectural mindset processes it as the necessary clearing of the lot. You cannot build the skyscraper until you excavate the dirt.
Okay, so what does this all mean? We've taken a title in 2 sentences and unpacked a really comprehensive, mechanically sound operating philosophy. Let's synthesize the core physics of what we've discovered here today.
Okay, first, the baseline reality. You are the architect. You operate within constraints, gravity, and systemic pressures, yes, but you maintain the ultimate agency of design. Second, your mindset is not a passive wish. It is the neurological sorting algorithm, the RAS filter, that dictates exactly which raw materials of data you use to construct your physical behavior.
Your mindset literally creates the boundaries of your world.
Yes, and finally, the engineering directive. Think bigger. It is a continuous comparative vector. It's the deliberate daily practice of overriding your biological desire for safety to elevate your perspective and expand your blueprints.
And the practical application for you, listening right now, is immediate. You don't need to memorize a textbook today. You don't need a new software program or a massive budget to begin.
No, not at all.
You simply carry these mechanics into the very next interaction you have. When you walk into your next high-stakes meeting or sit down to tackle a stalled project, you consciously select the sorting algorithm. You ask yourself, am I filtering this room for threats or am I filtering it for leverage?
Are you decorating the room or are you moving the walls?
Exactly. It is an incredibly demanding way to live, but it is the ultimate antidote to feeling like a victim of circumstance.
But before we let you go, we want to leave you with something to really chew on your own.
Something that builds on the underlying physics of this source material.
Right.
Because we've established that your mindset creates your reality, and we've explored the continuous command to endlessly scale up and think bigger. But there is a fascinating, almost paradoxical consequence to this continuous expansion.
Let's hear it. Well, if you are constantly thinking bigger, constantly drafting larger and more complex blueprints, there will inevitably come a day when your internal mindset vastly outpaces the physical constraints of the human lifespan and the physical world. What happens when the architect's vision becomes so massive that a single lifetime is no longer enough time to build it?
Oh, wow. That is profound. You're talking about legacy architecture.
Exactly. Does your reality break under the realization that you cannot finish the building, or does your mindset shift one final time, realizing that the ultimate expression of thinking bigger is drafting a blueprint that requires you to lay a foundation so massive, someone else has to finish pouring the concrete after you're gone?
Man. You know, usually when you walk into a building, there's an expectation of permanence.
Right.
You just navigate the space someone else built. But tomorrow, when you walk into a room, you might just look at the walls and ask yourself, whose blueprint am I walking inside right now? And how much bigger can I build my own?
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep drafting.